I'm representing Initech Alberta, and we're a applied research and technology organization. So we deliver services and we operate facilities which help people de-risk their solutions and scale them. So just to tell you a little bit about myself, I was educated as an engineer. I grew up in a mixed cattle-calf dryland farming operation. I spent roughly half my career in the private sector, working in the corporate and then startup worlds, and I joined government. I spent a fair amount of my time, about half of it, working on partnerships, and I got into the research and innovation space. And more recently, I'm now part of Initech Alberta, and my role there is Executive Director of Strategic Growth. So what does that mean in practice? It means I spend a heck of a lot of my time trying to figure out where the market opportunities are, what are the challenges that industry needs to overcome, what are the opportunities that we need to enable, and trying to move Initech Alberta in that particular direction. So that's a good chunk of my focus and why I found it quite interesting coming in yesterday and hearing a lot about what was going on. There's great depth of experience and knowledge in this room, and I'd like to tap into that as part of my presentation. So maybe if we could tee up my presentation now. So I'm going to be focusing on innovation and investable or investment opportunities in that particular space to move industry development ahead. So just a really quick recap, Steve did a great job introducing Initech Alberta. Million square feet of facilities, over 200 people, and we have a farm in particular which is relevant to this group of 600 acres in Vegreville. That is essentially the center of our hemp cannabis development. We do have some things going on in Mills in addition to that. It's important to note that we have a Health Canada license for research and development in the hemp cannabis space, so we can play from the early development all the way to the scaling part of that spectrum. So you've seen these slides before. I won't go into huge detail. There are essentially four major opportunities here: food, feed, fiber, and fractions. And the important thing to note here is where things start to take off. Traditionally, this has been an area where food is very important, but you're starting to see the fiber and the fractions component of also taking off as we go forward. And so it's important to note that this is a $1 billion opportunity for Canada, but Alberta actually has a high percentage of the sown acres of hemp in Canada, so something up to about 40% depending on the particular year. So if it's a $1 billion Canadian opportunity, it's a very big opportunity for Alberta as well. So this slide is about the hemp value chain. So because I'm a strategist for the corporation, I want to understand where the value is and where the investable innovations. So I basically break this into four major pieces. Under production, we have plant science and management, so that's about the new varieties of plants, the new ways of growing and managing the production, etc. Under processing, things such as mechanical pre-processing, retting, decortication, thermochemical processing. There's some pretty interesting things going on right now in the retting side of things in terms of more uniform retting results and accelerating the process. We have a decortication plant, and I noticed that a lot of businesses are putting those in place as well, which is good. It's a sign that the industry is moving ahead. Thermochemical processing, Steve mentioned the pressurized reaction tower. That's something we're busy installing to help out with fractions and the further processing of fiber to get it to the next step, which is the product side of things. So under advanced conversion, we've heard a lot about the food side of things, but there's also innovations in terms of fractions, in terms of materials, textiles, composites, etc. We have capacity to do that, and we're seeing a fair amount of activity in that regard. And kind of in the future category, which I was hearing there are actually people in the audience about fermentation. Traditionally, we've grown it in the field, but there's opportunities for product development in the fermentation space. So taking microbes, putting them in a fermentation tank, and having fractions come out of that. The fermentation is also helpful in terms of developing enzymes for breaking down things at various points in the value chain. Then underpinning all of this, there's opportunities in digital systems. So digital systems in terms of how to grow the plants, how to develop new varieties, and also about how to track things from production to the end user. So I'm going to come back to this slide at the end, and I'm going to ask people a little bit about where they see the innovation opportunities, either reducing challenges or creating opportunities. So just be prepared as I go through my slides. It'll just spur on some of the thinking. So in terms of production, research, and development, a number of challenges in terms of specialized plants and organisms and varieties. The investable opportunities here, We see them as plant science and synthetic biology, so new varieties of plants. Steve referred to Silesia and other varieties, so Silesia would be your fiber-based. But as we get more into fractions, you have to create different varieties of plants and new organisms ultimately to produce this, potentially in a fermentation situation. As we get into new varieties and new growing conditions, there are new ways to deal with disease detection and production management. I'll get into a little bit of that in the next slide here. So these are just some slides about some of the things we have going on principally in Vegreville. This applies, the digital data sciences applies both to the production and the processing side of things. That picture on the right there is digital cameras. Those are linked to vision interpretation systems, artificial intelligence, machine learning. They take a look at plants, they determine how they're growing, and what might be the emergence of particular diseases. So there's disease detection and management systems. There's also implications for plant breeding and screening automation. So plant breeding and screening is a very manually intensive process. We're trying to take some of that work out of it and increase the cycle, reduce the cycle times by using machine learning systems to look at the plants as they're growing, not just as individual plants, but as an entire crop in a particular area. So yes, we do have drones and cameras in the field and things like that. That's a way of increasing the speed of innovation. And then last but not least, data management. So using it to manage your production efficiencies, et cetera, but also tracking your fractions, et cetera, as they move into market. Very important in a regulated environment. So that then brings us to processing facilities and equipment. And I just take my hat off to what I was hearing over the last few days. Industry is going in a big way to deploy a lot of these things. There's still some opportunities for innovation. I refer to retting. There's ways of treating plants either in the field or in an industrial type of situation that might be considered to improve that process for its consistency. And in terms of conversion facilities, there are some other ways to do treatment, which we're also exploring with some of our partners. And then below that is fermentation, so the synthesis into fractions. I'm labeling it as future because there are some challenges for doing that from a scientific perspective, but we're seeing progress in that. So rather than producing, for instance, a cannabinoid in the field, you may produce it in a fermentation tank. So this slide is something that Steve showed, and I just call your attention to the top part of it, what are the opportunities in the emerging areas of growth, high-value fractions, computer, so the digital side of things, advanced composites, textiles, and pharmaceuticals. So I've referred to those in the previous part of my chat. And then finally, products. So as you've seen in the growth curves, there's continuing opportunities for food. Innotek provides food ingredients, but we partner very closely with Alberta Agriculture and Forestry and Rural Development. They have a Leduc Food Development Center, so we work with them on food and food ingredients. Fiber, various different applications, which have been covered in a lot of detail in the conversations in the last few days. I see the acceleration of feed and fractions. So as you look at the whole plant, those areas will be starting to pull ahead, not just in terms of plant-based, but also fermentation-based. So I've gone on very quickly through the value chain, and I'm going to take you back to this chart from the beginning. And I'd just like to do a rough poll of the audience. I'd like to look at production, processing, products, and digital systems. And I'd like to ask the question, which of these areas, if you apply innovation, will have the biggest effect in terms of reducing the challenges or increasing the opportunities? So I'll start with production. So a show of hands. Do you feel that's the top area for innovation opportunities? A couple hands here. Okay. How about processing? Okay, seems to be more interest in that side of things. Okay. And product innovation? Okay, about equally weight, maybe a little bit more on that. And digital systems, so digital management, digital breeding, production, et cetera, tracking. Okay, a couple hands there. Very good. Okay, well that ends my talk. Thank you very much for sharing that. So the quick results of the poll, production is kind of at this size. Processing and products are more interest for innovation, and digital systems is kind of in the midland sides of things. So if you're interested in innovation, come talk to us. We're more than interested. Thank you very much, and we're on to the panel and question and answers side of things.